Hello, Maniacs, and welcome back to another episode of Cult Classic Mania. I'm your host, Matthew, and this is just a quick reminder to let you guys know that I will be taking a break after this. Not only am I going to prepare for the month of April, but also revamp our Patreon page because we don't have a lot of, in terms of perks. So I'm going to add a little bit more to it, maybe make it more about you guys, because it seems sort of redundant to tell you guys to support us monetarily and have absolutely nothing on our Patreon page that actually contribute to the show. It just seems sort of redundant. So I'm gonna make some changes to it, and it's gonna be more towards the audience. You guys can participate more and interact with me to make it more intimate, I guess, in a way. So yeah, go ahead and look forward to that. And if you have any movie suggestions for the month of April, I have some ideas in mind for the month of April. I've already asked you guys a couple of times. And if you want to, go ahead and suggest a movie. You can go ahead and DM us on Instagram at Cult Classic Mania. Or if you feel like getting in touch with us quicker than that, go ahead and hit us up on Twitter at CCM Pod. Or even Facebook. I don't use our Facebook a whole lot because there's not a lot going on there. But you can go ahead and go to facebook.com/Cult Classic Mania. Yeah, that's all I got for you guys in terms of announcements. This movie that we're doing for this week, it's going to be a fucking dumpster fire. So we are covering Samurai Cop, directed by Amir Shervan from 1991. And I hope you guys enjoy this week's episode.
Fuck ass, give me a beer!
Welcome back to the cinema. This is not for the typical. Time to feed the occipital lobe with the films that I call my home. Buckle up, settle in, while we break it down a bit. Got a new take, make an old film relevant. But to give attention to the unsung revenants of the film industry, that's a wrap, let's riff.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Cult Classic Mania.
Hello, Maniacs, and welcome back to another episode of Cult Classic Mania, a podcast dedicated to the low-budget disasters that we all know and love. Not all of them are low budget, but they definitely can be disasters. I am your host, Matthew, and this week we're talking about Samurai Cop from 1991, directed by Amir Shervan. And before I dive into the movie more, I'd just like to take a few seconds to say thank you for allowing us to hit over 300 plus downloads of all time. Now, it may not seem like a big number to you guys, but I am really stoked that we finally hit that number. I can't wait till we hit 400 downloads of all time. I have a feeling we're going to hit that before this summer. Well, at least before spring anyway. But yeah, I am really excited that we hit that number. I know numbers don't mean a whole lot to me as I just do this for fun and not for any monetary value. But again, I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate it so much. And I can't thank you guys enough for your support. It really does mean a lot to me. Now that the heartfelt thank yous are out of the way, I did mention that we are doing Samurai Cop from 1991 this week. Originally, I planned to do the Giant Spider Invasion, but I feel like Samurai Cop is more fitting for this type of show. I mean, the Giant Spider Invasion did only make like $70,000 box office wise, but I think you guys will enjoy Samurai Cop a little bit more. This movie is fucking terrible. I thought Malibu Express is probably the worst action movie we've done yet, but somehow Samurai Cop is even worse. It's like, you know when there's a wreck on the highway and it just seems like the most devastating thing ever that you've ever witnessed, but you just keep staring at it because like you're just like, holy shit, that actually happened. This is sort of like what Samurai Cop is. It's like a really bad wreck on the highway that you just can't stop looking at because it's devastating, but you're like, holy shit, I can't comprehend that this just happened. This movie, I don't even know where to begin with this movie. There's literally zero redeeming qualities whatsoever about it. And I knew what to expect going into it. I've seen this movie before a couple of times. Ironically, I watched it for a movie challenge, a cult film movie challenge from Letterboxd. I didn't think anything of it. I gave it my 1 star and moved on to my next movie, thinking nothing of it. And then one day, I believe I was watching Miami Connections from 1985 or 1981. I can't remember the date. But I was watching that, and then I had my YouTube on autoplay, so it just rolled into the next film. And lo and behold, the next film was Samurai Cop, and I had to watch this goddamn movie again. Because, again, it's just like a terrible car wreck, but you just can't look away. It's that awful to me. Like, they can't even use a camera properly. There are multiple times where they literally have their thumb over the lens of the camera, for fuck's sake. Like, this director, oh my god, this fucking movie. I mean, Malibu Express is supposed to be taken for what it is, a sleazy, tongue-in-cheek action film. I'm fine with that. That's okay. I understand what they were going for with this, but Amir Shervan thought this was an actual great action movie. How he thought Samurai Cop was a great film whatsoever, I have no idea. I don't know what his thought process was, but Samurai Cop was directed by Amir Shervan. The film is starring Matthew Hannon. He plays Joe Marshall, and Mark Fraser, who plays Frank Washington. And these were the only two main starring characters. I mean, there was a bunch of no-names that were in the film, but literally no one was notable. I think the only girl that was notable, her name was Jennifer. I don't remember her last name because I didn't really give a shit, but she was in Slumber Party Massacre 2, I believe. But that was the only really notable actor and actress in the film. But yeah, this movie was released November 30th, 1991. The film didn't really get an official release per se. I mean, the only final copy of the film that was, the known final copy was owned by Matthew Hannon, and he didn't really want it to be released. He's like, I'm going to keep this, and I don't want anybody in the world to ever fucking see this. But I guess some Polish company got a hold of it and put out an official Blu-ray release. I don't know if it was released on VHS. I couldn't find anything on it, but yeah, it was released on Blu-ray. I think they have a anniversary disc out now, and there's somehow a sequel to this fucking movie because it just grew a huge following for some reason. The main reason why it got a notable following is because there's a clip on YouTube. It's called The Horny Nurse Scene, and I'll get to it later on, but I'll probably insert the audio clip later on of what made it popular. But yeah, that's the only reason why this movie actually gained a following, because of that actual scene. But yeah, Matthew Hannon, he ended up changing his name because he didn't want to be known for this movie at all. And, he didn't change his name. He just kind of went off the grid and didn't want anybody to find him. And people actually thought he was dead because of this. Like, he didn't come out and say, like, hey, I'm alive until, like, 2004, I believe. And it was like his daughter told him to, like, make a YouTube video, just say, hey, guys, I'm alive. I was in this really awful movie called Samurai Cop. And, it's just a really douchey video of him, like, shirtless. But I'll try to link that in the notes to see if you guys want to watch that. It's pretty fucking funny. But this film, it's again, Joe Marshall and Frank Washington are two ruthless cops who seek at all costs to stop the Katana, a gang, another gang called the Yukaza, I believe, composed of ruthless killers who lead the drug trade of Los Angeles. And it has the funniest tagline ever. You have the right to remain silent. Dead silent. I never did find a budget on this film, but I guarantee you they didn't spend maybe more than $40. I'd be surprised if they spent more than $40 on this film altogether. But we get an opening scene where the gang that they're trying to stop, the Yakuza gang, I believe that's how you pronounce it. I don't really care. It's contemplating on siding with another rival gang. And that's not how gangs work, but whatever. And they go to meet up, and the gang that they're asking to side with, they don't agree. And this is when we get the first terrible fight sequence. We are met with Joe and Frank, and this is one of those scenes where they had to reshoot later on. You can tell this because Joe is wearing a god-awful wig since he had shaved his head. And what I read was that he thought Matthew Hannon, he had thought the shooting of the film was over. So it's like, okay, that's fine, whatever, I'll go on to my next gig. But first, I'm going to shave my head. And he thought he was just done with the film. And then he walked into Amir's office one day. He's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Where's your hair? He's like, I shaved it off. I thought we were done shooting the movie. You told me it was done. But apparently they still had like 3 or 4 months left to film. So, yeah, there's like multiple scenes where they reshot, and he's just wearing this god-awful fucking wig. And I honestly felt bad for him. I don't know how he stuck through doing this terrible fucking movie. But we get another more awful dialogue between Joe and Frank about how the gang that they're after, some of the members of the Katana gang, they're after them. And Frank calls in for a helicopter to get a bird's eye view of what's going on. And there's like, and at this point, whenever they're showing the helicopter, they're showing it from the back kind of, and it's like turning in. And this is when you get the first scene where the cameraman has his finger over the goddamn lens. And there, like I mentioned before, there are multiple times where the director just has his fingers over the lens. I don't know why. I don't know why they didn't reshoot it, but whatever. I'm not the director here. I'm not the cameraman. And this is when they spot the van the gang is driving in, and the pilot calls Frank by the wrong name. I didn't realize this at first. I had to rewind it. I was like, wait a minute. That's not his fucking name. I think she calls him George, but his name is Frank. And it's saying that they have been spotted. However, they quickly lose sight of the gang. These criminals, by the way, are the worst criminals ever. First, not to mention that it's broad daylight out, and they're driving the sketchiest van ever. And then to top it off, they rent a fucking rental boat from the marina that they're at doing the drug deal, and they look incredibly suspicious because they're carrying around literal suitcases of cocaine, like kilos and kilos of coke, just in broad daylight. And I had read that Amir, he couldn't afford the lights to actually shoot during the nighttime, so they're all shooting in broad daylight, looking suspicious as fuck, just carrying around suitcases of coke. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Just, if you don't have the budget to do a film, why are you doing this? This is not realistic. Joe and Frank, they eventually catch up to the gang's van by cutting them off in a neighboring street. Joe, he has the clearest line of sight ever to shoot the driver, but instead, we get the worst dialogue and action sequence ever to let the driver go. And the sequence ends by the driver crashing into a pole and running out and is caught on fire. And the driver, he runs out on fire, like he jumps out of the driver's side door and runs out and on fire. And instead of putting out the fire off screen, Joe and Frank, they end up running out with a fire blanket and fire extinguisher. And on screen, they are putting him out and putting out the fire on the guy. I'm not fucking kidding you. I'm not making this shit up whatsoever. We get a cut back to Fujiyama's house, who is the leader of the Katana gang, where Yamashita, I don't fucking know, is played by Robert Zadar, and he is explaining who Joe is, and he's like saying that he's a samurai cop or whatever, and you don't realize he's a samurai cop until 15 minutes in the movie. Usually you point that out in the intro of the movie, but whatever, I'm not the writer here. And to his leader, and none of this dialogue really matters. It's just, and he's literally explaining what he's going to do step by step on how he's going to kill him. Like, we don't give a shit. We know you're going to kill him. Whatever. And Joe and Frank, they head to the hospital to check on the burn victim from earlier. And this is the infamous horny nurse scene. I'm going to insert the clip here to let you guys just bask in the glory of the awful dialogue that is Samurai Cop.
Do you like what you see?
I love what I see.
Would you like to touch what you see?
Yes, I would.
Would you like to go out with me?
Yes, I would.
Would you like to fuck me?
Bingo.
Well, then let's see what you've got. Doesn't interest me. Nothing there.
Nothing there? Just exactly what would interest you? Something the size of a jumbo jet?
Have you been circumcised?
Yeah, I have. Why?
Well, your doctor must have cut a big portion of it off.
No, he was a good doctor.
Good doctors make mistakes, too. That's why they buy insurance.
Hey, don't worry. I got enough. It's big.
I want bigger.
Hey, I have, Have you been circumcised?
Shut up.
And they literally, this is like, the scene is like, they literally talk about the size of Joe's dick and if he's been circumcised or not for like at least 4 or 5 minutes. And there are multiple breakings of the fourth wall at this point. And this is the first one during the horny nurse scene where Joe and the nurse are talking, and it will like randomly cut to Frank giving the dumbest facial expressions ever. and he's looking directly at the camera. We get a hard cut to Yamashita, who again is played by Robert Zadar, and Peggy, who is played by Janice Farley. They are going to see the burn victim at the hospital from earlier, and they end up going up to slicing his throat and killing him, and they try to smuggle the body out of the hospital. And there is this most confusing chase scene ever. It doesn't make any sense. And whenever they're chasing Yamashita and Peggy out through the hospital, the way the camera angle is, it's really strange. It looks like one camera is on one floor and on a totally different other floor, but it doesn't look like they're trying to match it out to where like it looks like they're gonna collide. And again, whatever. I'm not the cameraman. I'm not the writer. I'm not the one telling them how to do their job. But maybe they shouldn't be cameramen, and maybe Amir shouldn't be a director. That's not my place to say, but I'm just saying maybe you need to find another line of work. And Joe and Frank, they're heading back to the police station, talking to the captain, who is Romer, who played by Dale Cummings. And this is another scene where Matt had to come back and reshoot, because you can see that dumb wig on him again. Also, Frank is doing the dumbest facial expressions again whenever the captain is talking to Joe, and Frank, again, he always makes the same facial expression too. It's like the stupid puckered face, like he's like doing the duck lips or whatever. And there's an argument, and the argument ends by Frank running up to the captain and kissing him on the forehead, and they run out. And this is when the scene was supposed to end, but apparently Amir forgot to yell cut. Matt was explaining that Amir literally went and left. He's like, he went to go eat lunch, and the captain is just sitting in the chair laughing his ass off so hard, and they end up forgetting to shut off the camera. Jesus Christ. Joe and Frank, they head to the bullpen of the police station to discuss on the whereabouts of the Katana gang, and one of the cops, they end up mentioning that the gang is at a restaurant. Of course, Joe and Frank, they head off to the restaurant where the gang is at, and he meets up with them, and Yamashita is sitting down, and Yamashita says, what are you, a cop or whatever? And Joe explains that he is literally a cop, and he goes and he explains his job title and what he does on a day-to-day basis. And they leave the restaurant, and they're quickly met with Yamashita and his men that he had hired. And we get probably the worst, I say this throughout the entire film, but this may be even worse than the beginning fight scene, but we get the worst action sequence ever, and Yamashita is shooting the men that he had brought out, and Joe and Frank are also firing back, and they are seriously, like, the guns that they're using fucking paintball guns. It looks like a paintball gun that they're using, because there's paint splatter on the guys that they're killing, and instead of the men dying after being literally riddled with bullets, they just lean against the car acting like nothing happened. Like they just got a light bruise and nobody dies. Apparently nobody fucking dies in this movie. After the fight scene, there's not a whole lot going on. It goes on for about good 20 minutes or so where there's not much going on. And there's terrible dialogue between Jennifer and Joe. Jennifer is one of the women that was with Yamashita and the gang back at the restaurant. And it cuts to the infamous nightclub fight scene where this fight scene, it lasts so long. And it ends up continuing outside. And again, one thing to note, though, throughout this fight scene, there's multiple times where there's like one of the guys, they end up accidentally pulling off Joe's wig because it was a reshoot that they had done. And instead of refilming this fucking scene, they just let it go, showing him his wig being ripped off. Again, this action sequence, it's still going on. It's so fucking long. And the only eventful thing that happens is Joe's wig getting pulled off. And Joe, he ends up apparently following Jennifer later on to church because, as Joe had tried to ask Jennifer out, she's like, I have church on Sunday and it's my birthday. I can't really go out with you, so don't bother. And he follows her and asks her to lunch, and they head back to his house. And there's this weird ad-lib where Joe literally explains that he had stolen the chicken that they're eating from his neighbor's house and ends up killing it for them to eat for that lunch. Are you fucking kidding me? If I was on a date and you said, hey, I went over to my neighbor's house and I noticed that they had a chicken, so I'm going to fucking kill it and we're going to eat it and I'm going to explain to you that I killed it and ate it. But meanwhile, this is happening. The Katana gang is back at I believe it's an officer's house, and they're looking for Joe. The gang ends up killing the 2 people in the house, and they head to Frank's house to interrogate him, asking where Joe is at. Finally, Frank caves in, and he mentions that they're at Joe's house, and there's a weird, uncomfortable scene where Joe had baked Jennifer a birthday cake, because I mentioned that earlier she had mentioned that it was her birthday, and this is when we get another uncomfortable sex scene, and they're so in love with each other. There's a whole weird side plot to them about being in love. And it doesn't really matter. I don't really feel like getting into it because it's so long and so uneventful. And eventually the gang catches up to Joe and Jennifer. And lo and behold, there's another awful action sequence. And this is when it cuts to, drastically after the scene happens, it cuts to Joe and Frank at the police station talking to the captain again. Apparently the captain doesn't care if they commit multiple murders at all against the gang. Because he's like, it's going to be fucking ruthless. You're going to kill all of these motherfuckers and they're not going to live. I don't want them to be alive. Frank is like, sir, I don't think that's how a cop actually works. I don't think that's how I can do my job. And he's like, I don't give a shit. You're going to get these motherfuckers and get them off the street. I don't care what happens to them. And he's like, all right, whatever. And again, because proper justice doesn't matter. And Joe and Frank, they chase after the gang again. By Joe, he ends up jumping over the fence of where they're chasing after the guy, and Frank ends up jumping under, and this is where we get a stupid Joe ad-lib where he asks, why'd you come under the fence? And Frank responds, 'cause I'm an undercover cop, man. Oh my...
Why did you come under?
'Cause I'm an undercover cop.
I guess whenever they actually put that into the script, it wasn't originally on the script, and Joe was like, the guy that plays Joe, Matt Hannon, he thought it was the funniest line that he'd ever come up with, and he's like, all right, let's add this in here. This will be fucking hilarious. And what happens next? There's another terrible action sequence that carries on. There are multiple times where these gang members are literally riddled with bullets, and they don't bleed out whatsoever, and they don't die. Because, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's Joe and Frank, they have one final standoff with Mr. Fujiyami holding Jennifer as a hostage, and Mr. Fujiyami tells them to drop Joe and Frank's guns. And this is when he ends up shooting Frank in the chest, but he explains later on that he won't die because he's got a vest on. And this is when he leans up and ends up shooting Mr. Fujiyami in the chest and killing him. And the movie could have honestly ended there, but instead, Joe and Frank, they end up leaving to go find Yamashita to finally kill him off. And again, a super uneventful action sequence before it leads up to Yamashita and Joe fighting. And there's one point where I believe it was Joe, he ends up shooting an African-American man in the chest, and he shoots him square in the chest, and he's not wearing a vest whatsoever, but he's just like, he heels over and attempts to die, but then he just gets right back up again like he didn't even get shot again. God damn it. Yamashita, and they end up fighting Joe, and this is when there's another scene where it's reshot again, where Joe is wearing a wig, and Yamashita ends up pulling off Joe's wig, and Joe starts to behead Yamashita, but towards the end, this is towards the end, by the way, but Frank stops him and reminds him that he's a cop, because they literally killed so many people, but instead Frank is just like, he's like, whoa, hey, man, and just don't forget that we're actually cops. You can't kill them like that. And they've literally killed so many people at this point, and this is when they're worried about being charged for murder. You fucking kidding me? And it ends by Joe and Jennifer having sex on the beach, because, again, they could have just ended it with Mr. Fujiyami being shot. Again, I'm not the writer, I'm not the director, so I'm not telling them how to do their job, but maybe spend more than $40 on a fucking movie, get a better director, and get a better writer. I haven't mentioned this on the show at all, but honestly believe that the 90s for film, it was probably easily one of the worst eras for film. Like, I loved everything about the 90s pop culture-wise except for film. Like, I loved 90s music. I loved the 90s TV that came out. And I just loved everything about pop culture in the 90s except for movies. Don't get me wrong, there were a lot of good movies that came out in the 90s, but it was overshadowed by a lot of terrible fucking movies. Don't get me wrong, though, I love the 90s. I just hated film from that era. I know it seems that way for every era, though. It seems like there are, for every bad movie, every group of bad movies, there's a bunch of good ones. But it just seemed like the 90s was just worse overall in terms of that category. And like, my expectations were already set pretty low for this film. Like, I've seen this before already, so I knew what I was getting myself into. And I can't believe I watched this movie not once, not twice, but 3 fucking times. I can't believe I wasted this much time watching this fucking movie. Jesus Christ. Like, people actually love this movie too. Like, I don't know if it's like a joke that I'm not catching onto, but yeah, it's really bad. It's funny to watch, but it's like, I'm losing my sensibility here, and you're just fucking with me at this point, apparently. And Jesus Christ. But also, I forgot to mention that throughout this entire film, the color is really strange. Like, the way that they had, apparently in Mirror, he had the negatives of the film, and that's the copy that Matt Hannon got. He got, like, the partially edited version of it, and that's what they based it off of to release the Blu-ray. And so instead of going through and making changes and editing to, like, colorize it, they just kept it the way it was. And it's like, you get this weird, sometimes you'll get, like, black and white shot, or, like, midway through, there's, like, it looks orangish, like, whenever it's still a negative, because they've partially developed it, and it will come up like a light orangish color, like, just looking like this shitty negative shot that nobody decided to go ahead and develop, because fuck it, we're just gonna shoestring this together and hope for the best, I guess. I guess that was their motivation behind it. And, yeah, this movie is just, it's a dumpster fire. It really is. It's like, hey, it's like somebody asking me, hey, do you, like, want to write a movie and eventually just make one and see what you can do and see what we can come up with? And that's basically what the result of was for this movie. Also tying this back to the dialogue as well, like, Amir, he was obviously Arabic, and everybody else on the set was English. And whenever he wrote the script, he wrote it in his native language, because he hardly spoke any English. So I get it that the dialogue is terrible, but have a ghostwriter or an underwriter say, hey, that's not how we talk in America. I'm not trying to be racist whatsoever, but just be like, hey, let's kind of translate this into the English language and try to make the script a little bit better. That's why they have that horny nurse scene where they're talking about him being circumcised or not, because he thought that was the funniest shit ever. Like, he wrote that into the script thinking it was funny, but no one in America cares if you're circumcised or not. Are you kidding me right now? They added that thinking it would be hilarious, and there was a bunch of times where that happens, where he thinks these jokes are going to be funny, but the way he translates them into English, it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't add any value whatsoever to the script. Again, the biggest issue with this film was the budget, of course, and like I mentioned earlier, I don't know what the actual budget was, but I guarantee you they spent no more than $40 on this fucking movie, and that $40 probably went to the boat rental that they got from earlier at the marina, and that was probably the only money that they spent on this fucking movie, because, again, like, if you spent at least $1,000 to where you can kind of afford the lighting or had something to add value to this whatsoever. Like, again, all the shots were shot during the daytime because he couldn't afford lighting to actually shoot at night. That's why everything is during the daytime, and it looks sketchy as fuck whenever they're chasing after each other or anybody's doing a drug. I mentioned earlier that there are 0 redeeming qualities about this film whatsoever, and I still believe that. Like, even after just finishing through this episode and going over what my thoughts on everything, there's like 0 redeeming qualities whatsoever. And if your main lead guy, Matt Hannon, thinks this movie is so awful and he doesn't want it to be released, that he literally goes into hiding because he doesn't want to be known for this movie, it's really bad. I give a lot of kudos to Matt Hannon, because he was like, whenever he was coming out of hiding and saying, hey, I did this really shitty movie, I'm that guy, he was really cool about it. He was really ashamed about it for years that he actually did this movie. And now he's like doing interviews and people are finding out about him and knowing who he is. And he's really cool about it. He's like, yeah, I was really in this, I was honestly in this shitty movie. I can't believe I did it. I was just a hungry actor wanting to get my name out there. And, you know, this guy, Amir Shervan, he got my headshot and he said he wanted to work with me. He hired me right on the spot because of how good my hair looked and how fit I was. And he's like, I knew right then and there that this movie is going to be awful just because you hired me based on my looks. Like, you didn't have me do any readings whatsoever on the script, and I had no idea what the movie was about, but you hired me right on the spot. He's like, I knew this is going to be a terrible movie once you said that. And I know it sounds like I'm shitting on Amir a lot, but I honestly am, because this isn't his first go at a film, at directing and writing. He's done multiple movies, and I think he's done a little bit of TV directing, but he's been working since 1967, according to his filmography. So he has no excuse, even transferring into maybe writing a more English-oriented script to where he can actually do his thing and make a legitimate Hollywood movie. He has no excuse because he has all of this credibility already as a director, and it's baffling to me that someone actually thought this is a good film and he thought he can actually. I honestly don't know. I don't know his thought process whatsoever, what this film was about, and he thought it was going to be a serious action film too. He didn't realize it was going to be quote unquote funny. I'm like, are you serious? There's literally a line, an ad-lib line where Joe is like jumping over the fence, and Frank, you know, he crawls under the fence, and Joe asks, "Hey man, why'd you crawl under the fence?" And Frank responds, "Because I'm an undercover cop." Like, are you serious? Like, you thought this was going to be a serious action film? What is wrong with you? Like, Jesus Christ. I feel like I'm getting more and more angry just talking about this film. It's just baffling to me that it's like me setting out to do a film and I've never written or directed anything in my life and thought, hey, this is going to be a good idea and everybody's going to love it. Well, honestly, it's probably going to turn out shit because A, I don't have the budget, and B, I have no experience of doing this whatsoever. But I've never done anything in my life, and he's been doing these movies since 1967. So like I mentioned, he has no excuse for being this shitty of a director and this shitty of a writer. I have so many complaints about this movie because honestly, this movie is just one of the shittiest films I've ever watched in my entire life. Like, I don't know if I've seen anything worse than this. Like, this exact opposite of Akira. Like, Akira is the greatest film of all time, and then this week we're doing this fucking terrible wannabe action film that's not good whatsoever. And I'm sorry that I have to torture you guys with this terrible fucking movie. And like, yeah, I have a lot of complaints because there's zero redeeming qualities for this film. And another major complaint that I have was that Amir, he kept reshooting everything later on instead of just redoing right then and there because he was running on time and money, and all of the equipment that he had got was all rented except for he couldn't afford to rent lighting. He was spending everything on camera work instead, and he just didn't reshoot anything because he couldn't afford the editor to actually like polish this up. Instead, he just shoestringed all of these clips and everything together and hoped for the best. It said, hey, this is the final product. And hey, before I finish off this final product, I'm going to have all these actors and actresses come in on certain days and just have them break the fourth wall, for one, and stare at the camera and make stupid faces or make stupid action sequences all by themselves. And then, but also, I forgot to mention, whenever they're doing all these dumb facial expressions, they're doing them in a completely different location than where the original scene was taking place at. That's my biggest thing with that. Like, it's fine if you're doing a reshoot and just, like, doing the stupid facial expression. I don't know if they were trying to be funny, whatever. That's my biggest thing. Like, they didn't even, like, go to the same location because they couldn't fucking afford to buy the location back. Like, oh my... Yeah, I'm getting more and more angry. It just seems like I'm going on and on because this movie is fucking terrible. But yeah, that was unfortunately a Samurai Cop from 1991. Don't pay for this movie whatsoever. I know it's like $4 on Prime Video, but don't pay for it. Don't ever pay for this movie. The guys from Mystery Science Theater 3000, they have another thing on this side thing that they do for movies. Now, I believe it's called Rift Hacks, and that's what I watched. It was a comedic commentary by them. It was really fun, and actually made it more enjoyable for me to actually watch this movie, because if I didn't have any sort of commentary or anything distracting me, I don't think I would have been able to watch the film. And you want to have this amazing 35 or so minute episode of me just going off on a tangent about how fucking terrible this movie is. Yeah, the comedic commentary for this is on Amazon Prime for free. Do not pay for it. I believe it's on YouTube. I think you have to pay for it now. I remember the first time that I watched it, it was free, but I checked back earlier and I think it was like $3. Again, don't pay for this. Don't pay for this. It's fucking terrible, and I'm still angry about it 3 days later after fucking watching this thing. Yeah, you can watch it there. You can probably find it on Tubi TV, most likely. It's a free TV subscription service where you can watch movies and everything, blah, blah, blah. I'm not sponsored by them, but it's a really cool service. I'm not sure if it's anywhere else, but again, don't pay for this movie. Again, that was unfortunately Samurai Cop from 1991. Like I mentioned before this episode started, that I will be taking a break for the 325 episode, so don't be expecting an episode coming out. Well, maybe I might do a little something like just giving a preview of what the Patreon revamp will be like, and it just sort of going over what Patreon is. But I won't have a super official episode. I don't think I'm not gonna do 3 Japanese movies at once. Fucking Samurai Cop, Japanese fucking movie. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I did one anime, and I did Samurai Cop. I guess you can consider that a Japanese movie if you want to, whatever. And I thought about doing Seven Samurai from 1954, but I think I'm gonna break up the genre a little bit and not do Japanese again for a couple weeks. But the next episode will be episode 14, 15, and I'll probably do a horror movie. I'm not entirely sure yet. There's a few movies that I really want to cover. I'm not going to give it away. I think if you follow us on Instagram at all, or if you follow my personal account, I kind of hinted at what I'm going to do for April. But it's going to be a surprise. I'm not going to tell you what movie I'm going to cover. It's just going to, I think you guys will like it. A lot of you guys seem to enjoy it. I really love the movie, so I think you guys will like it. It's a fun one, but yeah, it's from 1985. That's all I could say. Oh, and I don't know why, it just totally dawned on me right this minute. This will be, after episode 13 airs, this will be the end of season 1 for Cult Classic Mania. So I'm going to kind of make it like a TV show and only have the first season be 13 episodes. Next season will be 22 episodes, so I'll be looking forward to that. Yeah, this will be the end of season 1. And we are ending it on a doozy with this fucking terrible movie. So, setting the bar high for season 1, aren't we? And we're going into season 2 with a good one, though. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. With all that being said, you can go ahead and keep up on all current updates for the Cult Classic Mania camp on Instagram at Cult Classic Mania, or if you want to follow us on Twitter and get more personal, if you want a faster response, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at CCMPod, and as well as Facebook.com/Cult Classic Mania. I am probably on Facebook the least because, much like Samurai Cop, Facebook is a dumpster fire. So, yeah, that's all I got to plug. Oh, if you want to support us monetarily as well, you can go ahead and do so by going to Patreon.com/Cult Classic Mania. And I haven't been doing it as much as promoting our dude that did this, our theme song. But big thank you to the dude, Petra Vida Music. You can go ahead and check him out at soundcloud.com/Petra Vida Music. His album from 2018, June Flower, is up. And I think you guys will like it if you like the theme song. He's really cool. Again, thank you, Petra Vida, for the awesome theme song. And with all that being said, this has been another installment of Cult Classic Mania. I am your host, Matthew. And I will talk to you all, not next week, but the week after that for season 2 of Cult Classic Mania. Talk to you all then.
We come in peace.
Fuck ass, give me a beer!
Yeah, welcome back to the cinema. This is not for the typical Time to feed the occipital lobe with the films that I call my home. Buckle up, settle in, while we break it down a bit. Got a new take, make an old film relevant. But to give attention to the unsung revenants of the film industry, that's a rap, let's riff.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Cult Classic Mania.